Are just at 4:01, so I'll get started. I want to thank everybody for coming today. We're live, and we had over 1,000 people registered to attend this live or to get the on-demand version of the seminar. So, to say the least, this is a very interesting time for all of us. I can tell you in California, it's been a very crazy weekend, and things just seem to unfold so quickly, and as it is all over the country, I know. My name is Jenny Takoyan, and I am a member of the customer success team, and I will be your moderator today. I want to start off by saying I'm excited to share this topic with you because it has a personal thread for me. When I was first introduced to Edulastic, it was because I was teaching at a charter school that had mostly homeschool students. And so I was looking for a solution that would bring a sense of community to my students that were scattered all across our county. And that's how I found Edulastic. And now 3 years later, I have had the privilege to work with a lot of teachers who are using Edulastic in really creative ways. And actually 3 of them are here for you today. And so I'm actually looking forward to learning a lot from this as well. So before we actually begin, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Ileana, who will give you a little bit of notes about the webinar, some housekeeping tips.
Hi, everyone. So for today, we're going to give you an intro of some of the tools on Edulastic that are available to you right now for distance learning. And then we're going to go into featured presentations, and we'll also have time for Q&A at the end. Something that's really important is finding that Q&A box. Because we have a lot of people on today's webinar, we'll need you to submit your questions in that Q&A box so that we can get to them. You'll notice that the chat is also available, and you can use that as well. But what's important is that when you ask your questions, they go here. Sorry, they go here. How do I go back? There we go. They go here so we can address them. Now I'm going to hand it back to Jenny.
Yeah, so if everybody sees that little Q&A, that's the one to use, and we will get started then. So before we meet our presenters, I think what we can do is turn everybody off maybe so we can have the full screen, Ileana. And then I'll start by, I'll kick off by showing you a few of the features that we have made available at Edulastic that will support distance learning. So as you know, you probably have heard from some of our communications that we have a number of features that are in our premium or enterprise plans that are paid features, but we're making those available for all accounts, free and paid, between now and July 1st. So these are the tools that we think will really help enable the distance learning, or even just help for getting over these hurdles where we may have classes or we may not have classes, or you might be having sporadic classes, for example. So I'm going to share my screen here, and I will bear with me just a second while I share. And so Ileana, I'm going to stop sharing your screen. And I'll share mine. And let me get over here. So this is, you should all see, let me put myself here on. Okay. You should all see my Edulastic page. And so I'm going to start today by going down to the Manage class. We have 2 features here on the Manage class that can be very useful for distance learning. And so the first is when I go into the Manage class, I'm going to click into one of my classes. And the 2 features I want to talk about are Co-Teacher, which is a premium feature, and printing your rosters. So the co-teacher, a co-teacher in Edulastic is another member of your district. So it's as long as that person is a teacher or an administrator and has an account, and they are a member of your district, then you can add that person as a co-teacher. A co-teacher in Edulastic has all of the same privileges that a teacher has, but the I don't know if everybody heard that. So a co-teacher has all of the same privileges. They can add students, They can remove students, they can grade, they can make assignments, they can make comments to a student's records. So by adding another teacher or another support system, it takes the burden off of any one teacher from managing all of the distance learning assignments. So to do that, let me walk you through how to add a co-teacher. Again, I'm on the Manage Class, and I've clicked into one of my classes. And now I'll go to the Action tab, and you'll see Add a Co-Teacher. So by adding this co-teacher, you'll type in, it can be an email address, it can be a first name. I'm going to type in my colleague number 1. Again, as long as they're in your district and they're a teacher or an admin, you can add them. So that name has come up, and I'm going to add that person. And now you'll see that the co-teachers, and you can have more than one co-teacher, the co-teachers will be listed here on that same page. So what this means for the co-teacher is when they sign in on their dashboard and in their managed class, your class will be listed for them as well. The thing about co-teachers is it's not one teacher that's assigned across all of your classes. You'll need to make sure that you add a co-teacher for each class in your manage class tab, but now you'll have that access. Another feature I want to talk about is something that's always been there and always been free, but it's a good reminder and it's a good tool in this situation. If you're preparing packets to send home to students, or you are communicating with the parents, you can print a roster. And so I'm going to go to this little print icon, and it will generate a printer-friendly document that has the names of your students and their username. And then when you scroll down, you'll have an individual card that you can send home or send to the parents for each one of your students. So this is something we've always had, but again, this is a really nice feature when you're putting together a packet of work for the next couple of weeks to be able to send this home. Similarly, we've also prepared a letter that you can send home to the families that teaches the parent or the guardian that's looking after the student a little bit about Edulastic and how they should log in and where they should log in. So this tool, this little resource will be available along with the tutorials of everything I'll be talking about. These will all be available at the end of our presentation. We'll share a link with you, and then we'll also email it out with the on-demand version of this webinar. So again, back on the Manage Class tab, you've got the roster that you can print. You also have the co-teacher. So let's move on to the Assessments tab, and I'll give you another example here of something that you can do. So another solution that we use is it's a combination of printing an assessment and using the premium feature called Express Grader. So again, if you are preparing packets to send home, or you need to email things to your students, and you have students that don't have access to online resources, maybe they don't have internet connection, or they don't have access to a personal device, then if you wanted them to take it on paper, you could use the print function. So the way that you would do that is I'm going to go here from my assessments page. I've clicked into my most recent assessments that I've assigned to my class. And here's the first pass at an ELA test. And if I scroll over here under the Actions button, I can print. So this button will generate a print-friendly version of the assessment. So you can see the paragraph is here, and then the students can answer on paper. So you can print one of these for each student. They can write their answers on the paper, and then the next time that you meet together, when the student turns in their work, you can use the Express Grader. So let me show you. The Express Grader is one of a couple of features that we have been sort of scrambling, for lack of better words, but we've been pulling together a couple of these features, and the Express Grader and a couple other features I'll talk about will be available later around before March 23rd. So we've got these working, it's just a matter of releasing them for you. So you won't see the Express Grader yet. And that's why, in order to show you how that works, I'm going to jump over to a paid account so I can show you the Express Grader. So here I am, it's sort of the same thing. I'm on the assessments page. Here's my assignment. I'm going to click into the assignment. This will take me to the live class board, and this is where I'll find the Express Grader. And again, a word about the Express Grader is that it will allow you to manually enter the scores of your students from paper-based assessments. So this allows you to not miss a beat between capturing the data and capturing each student's mastery towards a standard. Even if they have to take a paper version, when they come back, these can be quickly entered into the Express Grader, and then you'll capture all the data again. So one of the key points about the Express Grader is, in order to use it, the students have to have submitted their assessment. Well, so if you're printing out a paper-based version, you'll print the version, and then you'll come into the live class board and you're going to submit it for them. So you'll select all, and now all of my students have a check mark next to them. And then I'm going to go to the more, and I'm going to mark as submitted. So this is a feature, if you have exclusively used the free version, you may not have seen this before. And so this will be visible to you, as I said, around the 23rd of March. So if you notice, I've got everybody selected. Now I'm going to mark as submitted. You have to confirm the submission. And it'll take a second to rev through, but then you'll be able, for every assessment that has been submitted on the Express Grader, you'll be able to manually enter their scores. So you can see on these 2 questions, everybody's got a gray because it looks like they skipped them. It shows that it's graded. But now when I select Express Grader, all of my students' names are here. Their score is 0. And I'm going to use score entry. So I'll click on score entry. And this question is worth 2 points. So here I'll go ahead and add 2. This student got 1. So you can go through and manually change the scores. If you used a multiple choice, true, false, or one of the other classic question types, you can actually enter their response as well. That doesn't always work. It definitely doesn't work for the tech enhanced type questions, but if you do have a classic question type, you can actually enter their responses. So in combination, you would print the test out, and then you would go into your live class board, submit all the student scores, and then you can submit all the students' assessments, and then you can enter their scores and capture that information. So let me jump back to the other assessment that I was at. And here's another thing that we've got while we're on the live class board. We have a couple other things that we're offering you. One of the offerings is an enhanced redirect. And what that means is that it gives you a few more options when you want to reassign an assessment. So on the free version, you can just reassign it, but on a premium version, you have a few extra options that will allow you to interact a little bit more with the students. And these are actually really useful if the students were working from home and you wanted to give them feedback and wanted them to see their feedback on an assignment. You could use these enhanced redirect features. So what that looks like is this. If you notice on my students board here, I have one that's got a lot of reds and a couple of yellows here. So I'm going to give Grady another shot at this. So in Grady's assessment, if I click in here, I can give him some overall feedback. I can give him some specific feedback about each assessment. And then when I go back to the live class board to redirect it to him, you'll notice that I have the option of letting him see his previous response, so he can see what he did before. And then I can also show him any feedback that I gave. So if you're thinking of like a formative assignment or something where it's a little bit less, a little bit more casual, where they have you want to have a give and take with them, then leaving these options on would allow for a little bit more feedback to the student. And then when you hit redirect, the student will see all that extra feedback, and they'll have a second chance at answering that question. So that's the expanded redirect. And the last thing I'm excited to show you is the present mode. So what's cool about present mode, and actually I want to go to another assignment here that's got some answers to it. Let me go over here to the first pass. Oops, I'm in the wrong assessment. Just a minute. there we go. I want to go here. So what the present mode does is it anonymizes the students' records. It also shifts them around. So the students, when you're going over the assessment, the students won't have an idea of which one was theirs necessarily, or more importantly, which one was their neighbor's. So you can go over by selecting this present mode. Now, first of all, before I do it, I want to show you that Hasib, for example, is the first one on my list, and he's got all green. But when I hit present mode, it will anonymize the student records. It's been shifted around a little bit. And so all of these students, you can see the redirected one, we know who that one was, but everybody's been shifted a little bit. And now you can go over the results in like a web-based seminar with your students. So if you're actually doing some kind of a distance learning tool like Google Hangouts or a Zoom conference or any other kind of conferencing tool, as a whole class, you can go over the an assignment together in an anonymous way. So those are the main things about the live class board. The last thing I'm going to show you is something that we are rolling out again around the 23rd. And this is, we've enabled the Hangout, Google Hangouts directly from your class, your manage class tab. So I have to show you a screenshot of this because we don't have the, we don't have it live for users just yet. We have created this. It's now in the, it's ready on our side. We're waiting for the approval from Google. So they have to authorize it, and then we can release it. And what this allows the teacher to do is any teacher who is using Google Classroom to sync their classes will have the option of automatically launching a Google Hangout with the whole class. So if you can see on this small screen here, you'll see an icon that says launch a video class. The teacher will initiate it. And then on the student's dashboard, they will see the same icon on their class, in your class on their dashboard. And they can click into that, and your whole class will be entered into a Google Hangout session. So if you think about doing this Hangout session and then using the present mode, using Live Class Grader, using the redirect features and some of the communication you can have with the redirect features, you've kind of got a nice rounded out set of tools that will help you with any kind of distance learning. So again, ExpressGrader and the Google Hangout will be available around March 23rd, if not sooner. We've got our fingers crossed that we're ready to go. And if nothing else, it will help you in your planning on how you'll address any kind of school closures or any kind of distance learning that you may have to, hybrid of distance learning that you may have to engage with. So one last thing before I move on to our featured speakers, and that is that all of these a tutorial to all of these features will be available on a list that we send out, a link that we send out after this session. So now I'm going to turn to our featured speakers, and I'm happy to introduce our first speaker, who is Dr. Kara Pickens. She's an ELA teacher who not only uses Edulastic for remote assessment, but she also conducts full lessons. So I'll let Kara share a little bit more about herself and dive into the presentation.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Kara.
Hi. Okay, we can go to the next slide. I am a high school ELA teacher, and I also teach college level courses as well. But what I'm planning to share with everyone today, I think, can be used across curriculum areas and across grade levels, and even with elementary school students. I'm in the state of Indiana, and we've been doing e-learning days for snow days for quite some time now. So I kind of feel somewhat prepared for the situation that we've all found ourselves in right now. And we've also been one-to-one for a long time. I think we might be in our my 6th year of going one-to-one in the schools that I've been at. And I have learned a lot of lessons from having e-learning days, and so I'm excited to share them with you. And I've also been using Edulastic for several years, and I'm a huge fan of Edulastic. My students would probably be the first one to tell you that I love it. And I love all the different options it gives me as a teacher, and it allows me to use ed technology in creative ways. Here are some of the problems that I quickly discovered with e-learning days when we had them, and this was just for one day of e-learning. I'm assuming that over time, as a lot of us in districts are looking at right now, that these problems would be compounded. It's really difficult to sequence your lessons and to time your lessons. Students get really frustrated, and I'm going to share my students' biggest frustration on the next slide, but students are obviously a little anxious about completing work, and it's hard to do that without a teacher that's live with them. It's difficult for me as a teacher to track work, and I always enjoy e-learning days to watch students as they're completing it, but until it's completed, I don't know if they've started. And it's difficult to adapt something that you had for an in-class lesson to work online. Okay, so next. These are all the ways that Edulastic has really helped with that. First of all, the variety of question types on Edulastic allows me to kind of sequence a lesson and to do some interesting things, and I'll talk about that later. With my student frustrations, rather than breaking an assignment into smaller pieces, I can just give them one assignment on Edulastic, and it still has different components to it, but I think students feel a lot less anxious than looking at all these assignments all at once. I can watch students as they work live. They don't have to submit it in order for me to see it, and that's really huge. And then I can also include a lot of differentiation to a degree that sometimes I use these lessons, digital lessons, in my own classroom when the students are with me, because I can differentiate in some pretty amazing ways. Okay, next. Okay, so I just want to show kind of before and after what my e-learning digital lessons look like before I started using them for Edulastic. So if you look on the left, what I would do for students is I would prepare a hyperdoc for them that listed all the components of their lesson. And my school really has the expectation that our digital lessons are around a class period, but slightly shorter, so you give students enough time, but that they have all the components of a lesson. And then I would post all those components as individual assignments to do. So I would have an anticipatory hook, I'd have direct instruction, I'd have some practice, I'd have some assessment. And even though I would make those each really short assignments, this completely freaked my students out, because you can see in the middle image there what that would actually look like on Google Classroom, and that frightened them. They were like, Dr. Pickens has 5 assignments for me to do today. I'm not going to do that because that's awful. And they didn't even look to see that it was like a 2-minute assignment. So I decided to kind of play mind tricks on them in a little way. And I just did all those components, but in an Edulastic assignment. And so they just had one link to go to. And the feedback was overwhelming. They loved it. They loved to go to one place for all their assignments and know that they were completing a whole lesson that way. Okay, next. Okay, so this is what I do for my digital lesson plan. I create one Edulastic assignment that has all of the components of a good lesson. And I think this would work in elementary just as well as high school or even college. I start out with an anticipatory hook for students to draw in some personal connections to the material that we're about to learn. This one here was just describing something funny that happened to you. It was a lesson on irony. And then I gave a personal example. I often provide my students with modeled examples so they know what my expectations are. And this one had to do with the time that my husband's underwear was accidentally dropped into my classroom. But anyways, I just give students a chance to personally connect, and I just grade these for completion. They just did it so they get the full credit. Okay, next. I also use anticipatory hooks that are short skits. This was a BBC April Fool's video when we were evaluating online sources. Saturday Night Live skits, which I always have to be careful of because of the language, current event songs. These are just ways that students can connect to what we're learning. Okay, next. The next part of my lesson that I include in the same assignment is direct instruction for students. And I really take advantage of all of the features that Edulastic has with their question types to allow for differentiated instruction. So if you look at this particular screenshot that we have here, I had video instruction for students, and I'm using here the passage question type. And with passages, you're not actually limited to just have reading passages. You can include images and you can include videos too. So in this case, and then you can also have multiple tabs. So in this case, there's video instruction, and then I have written instruction on the second tab there. And then students fill out an exit flip about what they watched or what they were reading. And I allow students to choose which one they're going to use there. Okay, next. This is another example of direct instruction and differentiation. In this particular instruction, we were learning about author's purpose, and I actually gave them 3 different videos to choose from. One of them was easier, and then medium level, and then an advanced level, depending on what they felt like they were ready for. And then I also gave them text instruction as well. They all had the same exit flip, but that way I could kind of allow students to have a choice at what level they were learning. Okay, the next, and my kids are loud, so there you go. These are just some of my recommendations here. Is just to offer students choice. I've had really positive feedback, and I'm always surprised. Students often choose the most advanced choice. I think students want to be challenged, so give them that option. Mix up the type of instruction in different lessons so your students can be engaged. Try to use images and color in your text instruction. Edulastic gives you so many options about how you can format the text and make it look within your assignment, and it's so easy to make those changes. And I also just try to be aware of accessibility issues when using that color and making sure that I'm using dark colors. But I also tend to highlight key parts that in instructions so that students don't miss that. And also, you can create your own instruction using Google Slides and a screencast maker, then upload that into YouTube and then put that onto your Edulastic assignment. So there's just so many options there. Okay. I just included this, and I think this is going to be set out from Edulastic. There are so many resources online with videos and also kind of direct instruction, and also primary sources, primary images if you're working with history or social studies. So I've included those. I've also been using Capwing a lot, and what I'll do is take a video that maybe another teacher has made on YouTube, but I will clip it so it's in smaller chunks. So I'll have a couple parts of direct instruction, and then I'm asking exit flips after each chunk so that students can pay attention better. And I also use Screencastify a lot to create my own screencasts. Okay, next. Okay, then I have students actually apply the direct instruction. So in this case, this was the author's purpose, and I had them starting with some videos. But that's the next component of my lesson. This one was on author's purpose, and they had a Saturday Night Live video to talk about the author's purpose being entertaining. And there's all different question types you can use for this. So I used a 2-part question here. What's the author's purpose? And then they had to cite evidence from the video for that. Okay, next. This is another example of some application for students. And in this case, it was for one of my college classes. And what they were doing was actually a multi-step question in an essay form, and it was really complex. With the question, I actually added another tab to the passage-based question to provide them with a modeled example of what their answer should look like. So there's lots of different ways that you can provide students with extra support, especially if they're learning at home right now, to give them a lot of modeling and scaffolding so that they can answer the questions well. Okay, next. The last part of my lesson plan is to give students some chances to reflect on what they're learning. In this case, I connected it back to the attention grabber they had and then had them reflect on using some of the terms that we had studied in the direct instruction. And other times I might have students just tell me what they learned through this lesson. Okay, next. I also wanted to just talk about accessibility considerations here. There's a lot of options to change the font size for students with Edulastic. I also, if I have reading passages and I'm working with a reading assessment, I try to find audiobook versions of the reading passage, and you can just insert that in with the reading passage so students have that. Or you could make your own using a screen cap before for students too. But just giving them as much support as they need, and Edulastic just enables you to insert all those things into the assignment. Next. Another part, we already talked about that, but you can print out the paper versions. It's so easy, and I really appreciate that feature a lot for our students. Okay, next. I also, in addition to creating full lesson plans, use Edulastic for parts of lessons, and it's not always assessments. For this particular assignment, this was an anticipatory hook for a college level rhetorical analysis essay, and so it was just that part of the lesson. So you can use this for more than just assessments. Okay, next. A couple other things that I found to be really helpful is remembering that one lesson plan doesn't need to be finished in one day. Some of the lessons that I've put together, I would actually give as a multi-day assignment for students. And our students, I know, are really stressed right now. And so it's really important for us to be giving them a manageable workload. And I also really try to personalize the material I give. I think those human connections and those social connections we have with our students right now are really important. I try to use local material, like local letters to the editor or local images in my assignments. And I'm also going to really try to make an effort to create my own screencast so students can hear a familiar voice in the classroom. Also, as we're doing e-learning, there's ways to minimize chances of cheating. You can set it up so that students don't see the answers after they've submitted. And you can also ask more open-ended questions so that students can't screenshot their work and send it to other students. Okay, next. And that's just ways to keep in touch with me. So when this is shared, please feel free. And if you want to look up my assessments, if you just search for my name in Edulastic in the library, most of my assessments are available for other teachers to use. Next. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Kara. That was a lot of great information. I really like the way that you used the passage-based questions where they can choose their own level of learning. I think that's excellent. I hadn't seen that before, and I liked that a lot. I also liked how each one of the pieces were of the overall lesson were a separate section. Yeah, just really, really great stuff. And the modeling that you can do using the tabs in a passage-based question. So that was very creative. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I think Edulastic's awesome. So
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Great. So for the audience, if you have any questions for Kara, place them in the chat and we'll address all the questions at the end. And as you're seeing this, as you're going through, this is sort of the advanced version of Edulastic. If you have basic questions or questions about sort of the 101 of Edulastic, we have a lot of resources for you that we can share with you at the end of this seminar as well.
Oh, I also wanted to add, and I hadn't looked for a long time to see if this is the case, but when I first started using Edulastic, I'm not always tech savvy. I take a while to catch on. So Edulastic had, or still has, I hope, instructional videos on how to use each question and create it. Like all I had to do was click on a question mark and they would pop up. Is that still available?
It is still available. And
okay.
So when
it was a lifesaver to me at the beginning.
No, they're fantastic. Whenever you author a question, when you click into that question type, there's a question mark and it will launch a short video. You can also get all of those videos on our Edulastic channel on YouTube. So they live in two places basically. And now let's move on to Jen Lee. Jen Lee is an e-learning chemistry teacher for college and high school level classes. She conducts remote chemistry labs using Edulastic. And I'll let Jen share a little bit more about herself, but I will reveal that she is a trooper and has come to us after being injured all day long. And so thank you, Jen. Well, I'll hand it over to you to introduce a little bit more about yourself and show how you use Edulastic for e-learning.
All right, thank you. I've been teaching chemistry for a while, like 9-10 years at the college level, and I also teach it at the high school level. I've worked in industry as a chemist for a long time, as a research chemist and a pharmaceutical chemist before I ever became a teacher. So I have that real world sort of view on things, how like it pulls it in. And I've gotten a couple fellowships from different places as well. So those were all listed there, but that's just background about me. It doesn't really matter because, you know, you are what you make yourself, right? I teach an intro to college chemistry course, usually online or as a hybrid course where, you know, the hybrid course is like we go to lecture, but we do the labs online. And it's not an ideal situation because in an ideal situation, you would want people to have the physical, like hands-on, like lab thing, not just like click that button, click this button. So what we do is we use virtual labs that are really customizable and you can mess everything up. Like if you don't put the, you know, if you don't wait until something cools and you put it in the garbage can, it will blow up. So, you know, that we use this, it's called late night labs. And actually they're kind of transitioning out of it right now into a new system. But what we do is we give directions and then the students go into late night labs and then they answer on Edulastic. So I'm just going to kind of show you one of these, even though it's not like directly applicable to like what everybody can do, but this is just generally how I use it in, you know, normal life. Okay, so here's the purpose. So like I make tables like this. You can very easily make tables or whatever is very pretty in Edulastic. I can make tables like this because I know it's a virtual lab and I know what the mass of the empty calorimeter is going to be. It's not a surprise. It's not like a real lab where they're weighing something and could be a little bit off. So I can put those kinds of things in. And as we go through, we take more data. I ask them to, you know, figure out what their data means and analyze things. We do a second trial. And then they have to kind of think about things. Like here's a table and it says like, well, okay, so which one was yours? Which unknown was yours? And then I have embedded a video here. It's just a 38-second video with no sound, but in essence, it's pretty much a person putting copper metal wire into boiling water and waiting. And then, you know, it's hot and then they pull it out and they put it in their hands and it's like, they don't get burned. So the questions here are meant for the students to use what they've learned in this lab to explain that. Like, is it staged? Is it magic? Is it not real? Is it like, how did that happen? Like, what's going on? So then they have an essay question answer. So generally, I include a lot of different kinds of questions within a lab. It's not just like record your data, calculate something, what's percent error. It's not like that. It's more, I want them to understand more of a conceptual level because it's an intro to college chemistry course. These students aren't going to be chemistry majors. They're going on to be nurses and EMTs and things like that. And so they need more of a real world view of what is going on. So that's just generally how I use Edulastic, but I would like to show you all how you can use it too, because I know not everybody's going to go sign up for late night labs. So first of all, I made this activity yesterday. This is a take-home lab, and you can do this. I have a lot of ideas for take-home labs, but this is called green egg solubility activity. Pretty much what we're doing is, you know, the kids have already been exposed to in class, and even if they haven't been, it's okay, you can use it as an inquiry. They've been exposed to the fact that gases actually dissolve more in cold environments than in warm environments. And this little video here that's embedded right in, they can like watch it directly in here, see it'll play. Oh, it's unavailable right now, but that's okay. So they can watch the video. It's like really short, and then they they see that like warm seltzer water explodes all over the table. The cold seltzer water doesn't really do, it just, you know, bubbles a little bit. And so there's a quick check-in at the bottom, just sort of a drop down. You can put, this type of question is considered a multi-part because I embedded stuff and then I put check-ins. And then the next one, you know, I actually have like a picture, and we talk about cooking an egg. The egg heats up from the outside in. The gas, which is hydrogen sulfide gas, moves towards, you know, the yolk, and that's where it's cooler. And so it's kind of like guiding them through. And it's a lab that I would normally do in the classroom on a hot plate and just bring in eggs, you know what I mean? Like, so any very simple lab can be adapted to doing an at-home lab as long as they have the stuff. So this is, you know, to talk about, like, to prevent the yolk from turning green, and then another quick check-in, right? True, false questions. And here's the actual procedure where they actually do this, and then they have to answer questions about the gas. What is the formula for the gas? What was the formula for the green compound? You know, write the balanced chemical equation, and why does this prevent the green color if you do it this way? And are you gonna always put them in cold water after, like, later, and like why? And so it's a thinking lab. It's not necessarily a quantitative lab. I'm not asking them to take the mass of anything or the density of anything. Labs that you send home need to be accessible to everyone. Everybody has eggs or can get them pretty easily, even if they have to go to a neighbor and borrow an egg. So it, you know, you can always do take home labs. Other ideas for take home labs would be making a Cartesian diver out of a water bottle and like a ketchup packet. I'm sure you can Google that, but that's a very common one. Finger thermometer, where students put their finger in, like, you have a hot, a medium, and a cold water. So you put your finger in the hot, one in the cold, and then you wait 30 seconds and you put them both in the middle one, which is the same, you know, room temperature, and they feel completely different. And you can ask them questions about heat transfer and is your finger a good thermometer and that sort of stuff. Solutions, suspensions, and mixtures. A lot of people think that you can filter out like salt, like, oh, we have plenty of fresh water in the world because we can, you know, filter stuff out. But if you have them do something like dissolve salt or sand, or dissolve salt or sugar or something like that into water, and then run it through a coffee filter, does it filter out? Like, well, what's going on there? What if you put cornstarch in there? Now does it filter out? Like, so you can have them do all sorts of little kitchen type labs that actually teach them science, and you just sort of write the directions like guided as they go. So that's one idea for, you know, doing labs remotely. But also you can do this. This is a virtual lab directly from the FET Colorado site. And I've embedded the lab. Like, you can link to the lab, like I have a couple of them linked, but you can embed it directly in here and like run the lab like actually in here. And so you can, you know, you can do this, you can test the pH and stick your strip in and see what color it turns. Oh, look, it's like 2. And so you can actually have them, like, you write your full lab instructions down here and ask whatever questions you want. You can have it embedded directly in there. And I want to show you guys how to do that because I think it's a button that most people miss, right? So when you go to, here, I'll go to create a new question. Okay, come on, create a new question. Here's a question bank. Oh my. Author new question. Come on. So I go to, well, it doesn't really matter which one you pick. I'm going to pick multi-part because I usually do. But the problem is that people don't see this button over here. It's this little button. Add multimedia, insert multimedia. That gives you an embed code. So you can embed a YouTube video. You can embed any sort of HTML5 application that's running. You can embed stuff where it will run directly in Edulastic, which is incredibly powerful. That's really, really helpful to have that capability. Just be aware that once you paste it in there, you can't edit it. So if you need to edit it, you need to just go back and delete it and then paste it in there again. So that's okay though. So that's how you do that. You can embed a video or you can embed, you know, a whole animation. So, okay, wait, this is one more. No, go away. Okay. This is just one using SnapQuiz. I don't know if you guys have ever used SnapQuiz. This is like if you have a worksheet and you're not like all about inventing the wheel here, but you want the worksheet to be auto-graded and everything like that, you can just scan in the worksheet. Like, you take a picture of the worksheet or put a PDF of the worksheet up on Edulastic when you go create new assessment. It actually says, do you want to create one from scratch? or do you want to like use a worksheet? This is one that I created last night using a worksheet. It is simply like a vocabulary worksheet. And all you have to do is like click where you want to put each answer. And then the student answers it. And then when you get it out, you'll see like all of their answers, and it can auto grade. So this looks like under edit, here, I'll show you what it looks like, because it looks a little different when you edit it, is this. So there's all these different kinds of choices: multiple choice, multiple selection, text, entry, numeric, essay, or expression evaluator. So you can even do math problems in here and everything. And to put a new one, you just like simply, pick one and like put it somewhere. You don't even have to like have a question with it. You can give the options, you choose the right answer. And then when they go to take this, they see your PDF, they see the choices. You don't have to rewrite them or anything. It's so much faster than actually creating a whole assessment in Edulastic. I wouldn't use it all the time because I prefer my assessments to be in Edulastic because it's so pretty and it really works nicely when other people can share the questions. But it's a really good, quick way to make a worksheet into a gradable online activity really fast. I have shared a bunch of links in one of the documents that I guess you guys are going to disseminate to different virtual lab collections that are available right now. One of the biggest ones here is Chem Collective. They have all sorts of virtual labs available, and they're free, so that you can write any activity that you want around it. If you normally do an acid-base titration in your class and you want to do another acid-base titration, you just go in here and you'll have everything that you need to do, and the students can pull stuff from the stockroom and use different glassware and all that stuff, and they'll be able to run your lab, and then you can just ask them questions like normally. FET Colorado has 1 million for chemistry and a whole bunch for physics and math as well. And these are all the 5s. Those are all HTML5 capable, so that's good. American Association of Chemistry Teachers just put out like a whole thing. They've unlocked a lot of activities just for this COVID problem through March 31st. So if you don't belong to it, I would go to teachchemistry.org and at least view the list and get what you can, get what you think might help you before the 31st. They have all levels here: high school, elementary school, middle school, and some of the high school ones you can even use with college if it's like an intro course. So they have tons of them. Review the complete list. I mean, there's like 1 billion on here and for every subject. So just look through that. The link will be posted. And I think that's pretty much about it. I mean, I showed you one of my normal labs. I showed you I didn't show you the FET Adams. Yeah, I did show you the FET Adams lab. It's just it links to FET. That's these guys. Oops, not remote control. I hate that the thing is in the way of all these buttons here. Here's FET. It goes it's just a link to this, and then there's directions, but it's like outside. It's not embedded directly in. Sometimes you don't want the screen to be embedded directly into your questions because it takes up a lot of room. You can have them switch tabs. It's not that big of a deal. And then the Chem Collective I showed you, and embedded video and embedded simulations, and then SnapQuiz.
These are powerful. This is great information. Thank you. It is.
And if you look on that document that you guys shared, I put a lot of information about places that you can get all of these things for free. So there's a ton.
I am really glad that you brought up 2 things. The embedding tool, that is fantastic. I hadn't thought about how you could really expand what they're doing, and it's not at all static. And also thank you for bringing up the SnapQuiz, because I think that that's going to be a really quick method for teachers who are scrambling to get their packets together, or when you have just a short amount of time to get something online to get out to the students, that the SnapQuiz is really going to be a valuable tool for that.
It really will, because it's so quick. I mean, you already have a worksheet, you already have everything, you just have to click where you want the answers to be, and then you can send it out over Google Classroom.
Yeah, that's great. I want to move on to Lance because I don't want to run out of time with him. But Jen, thanks so much. And for anybody that has questions for Jen, please, again, put that in the chat and we'll address those at the end. Lance, we'll move on to you. Lance Key is both an instructional technology specialist and an online instructor. So he's taught all math classes that range from 6th grade to AP Calculus. So Lance, you've got some really great stuff. I'm going to hand it off to you and let us know what we can learn from you.
Alrighty, thank you. And I'm not able to turn my camera on, so if you would like that on, I think you might have to do that. But as you said, I am an instructional technology specialist for my district, and I'm also an online teacher. Currently, right now, I am teaching 8th grade students integrated math 3, which is a combination of algebra 2 and geometry. So I've got some really sharp students that I'm working with there. As you can see here on the slides, here is some of my certifications that I've gotten. I do work for a virtual school, which is VITAL, which is Virtual Instruction to Accentuate Learning. That is inside of our face-to-face public school district. And I'm also on the Edulastic Innovative team. Now, a lot of you probably are in the same situation that I'm in right now. We actually just canceled our schools in my school district 3 hours ago, and we're going to be out until at least April 1st. And we're sitting here wondering, well, what are we going to do? Well, luckily for me, as you can see also here, I'm a Google certified innovator. So me and the innovators across the world, we had people from Australia to England to Colombia, for California. We all got together and we came up with a plan for all of our districts together. So we were able to collaborate and work together to come up with a plan to be able to do that. So I've got a few links that I shared in here earlier. We're doing a podcast the next few days. There's a bit.ly link there. You can sign up for that. Also, I'm going to be sharing out to my teachers that I work with on a daily basis on my Twitter. So if you want to follow me on my Twitter there, you can. We're doing a podcast there also that will be covering a lot of this because we figured out that we're smarter together, just like you guys. We need help, we need support. And then I'm also a flipped math teacher. So what that means is I record myself using Zoom, and then I push that out to my students and they preload the content beforehand. So that's kind of who I am and what I do. So my classroom, if we'll go on to the next slide, you can see what my classroom looks like on a daily basis. So first off, this is some of my students in one of my labs. If you look on the back 2 TVs, you'll see another one of my classrooms if you zoom in real close. And then on the far right TV is myself. Go ahead to the next picture there. This is another one of my labs here. And then last is my office that I teach from here daily. So I'm teaching one class period a day to all of these students across our district because we can't afford to put one math teacher for 5 students at 5 different middle schools. So I teach it from my desk every day to these guys. So next we've got, here's kind of the way that I work through this is we've got to have data because when our students come to us, we've got to be able to use data to be able to target instructions for our students. And that's hard enough to do in our face-to-face classes, but we've got to be able to do that. So we're going to target the instruction will be the next thing that we'll do using this data. And the way that we're going to target that instruction is by using flexible content. So this flexible content is going to allow us to meet each student exactly where they're at. And then we had better, in the end, make sure that our students are reflecting on this and owning the learning. Because in this remote learning that we're going to be doing, if the students aren't owning the learning, we're not going to be successful because we're not always going to have mom and dad there looking over their shoulders and things like that. So we've got to make sure that they own that learning. So next, I'd like to talk to you kind of about my workflow and how I make this happen. So I always start off with Edulastic. Edulastic gives me the ability to be able to pre-test my students before every unit. So my students come in at different levels. I don't know what all of them know. So I have to pre-test them and see where they're at because not every student has to do every unit in my classroom. So I want to see exactly where they're at. And then I use my flip content to push out information to them. That's at mrkeysclassroom.com. I push that out to them and they're able to work at their own pace through the material. Then I have to meet one-on-one with them and I use Zoom to do that. But after using Zoom, I'll go in and I need to assess where they're at again. You know, do they get the teaching? Do they understand what's going on? So then I'll use Edulastic again. And you can use this as, you know, like daily bell ringers if you need to. If you need to do lesson checks, check-in, check-outs, I don't know if you guys do that, or mid-chapter quizzes. So depending on when you set up your assessments that you want to use, that's what I'll do. I'll use Edulastic to give me those benchmarks. So then when I run into an issue and I say, okay, the material that we discovered, a student didn't get it. Then I'm going and I'm looking for some OER resources. So I've got some content like CK12. SMOOP, and Khan Academy. I'm sure most of you are familiar with most of these guys. CK12 is mainly STEM based. They have a lot of great math and science content that you can use that's completely free, standards based curriculum that you can use. Khan Academy's been around for a long time, so I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. And then SMOOP's another one that we use that actually just got the best test prep, college test prep in the United States last year. So really enjoy using that. And then after we get through with that, we've got to assess again and make sure that the students are where they're needing to be. So we use Edulastic again to do that. So, you know, Edulastic's kind of the glue that holds all this together for me. So I want to look at a couple of little reports right quick to show you what these are looking at so you can understand what I'm talking about. So this is a pre-test that I gave my students a couple of years ago. And I give my students the options. You don't have to take the pretest. If you feel like that you need to go through all of this chapter, you can do that. Or if you want to pretest and test out of some of this chapter, you can do that. So the ones you see here that are in the gray, that's students that chose not to do the pretesting. And then of course, green means they got it right. Yellow means partially right. Red means that they struggle with that. This gives me the ability, you can see those two that has got partial green and a lot of yellow there towards the middle. This gives me the ability to be able to drive my instruction to know this is what my students are going to struggle with. Okay, so on the next slide, this would be an example of a quick little quiz that I would give them. This could be as I said, a lesson checkout or a mid-chapter quiz or a daily bell ringer that I give them. This just lets me know quickly how are my students doing as a whole. So I see they're doing approximately 4 out of 5, 80%. This isn't terrible. But I see this very first question that I got that I had a lot of students that were struggling on this question. So I need to go back and see what standard does that address, and we need to go spend some more time on that standard. Then on the next slide, it actually will break it down for me, and I can see the standard over here to the right. This is what I need to be focusing on. My students are struggling with this. This is where I need to be spending most of my time. Then on the next slide, we've got your quizzes. So first off, my tests. So when I give a test out, this is the view that I like to see as the teacher. Okay, so because I can see quickly, all right, whatever the first couple of standards are, I feel like we're doing pretty good there. In the middle, we're doing all right. There's a few things that we need to, you know, maybe look at. But these standards over here on the far right, my students are really struggling here. And just so you guys know, this is real data that came from my classes from the past year. So this isn't, you know, just some stuff that Edulastic pushed out that we could use. This is real stuff that, you know, we truly could be looking at. The next slide is my grade book that I've got. So my students, as I come in here and I look at these geometry standards that we're doing, all green, of course, is great. You know, and then the red, I can look there and be like, this is what we need to adjust. This is what we need to look at after the chapter's over. There's a couple other things you can look at. So like the student profiles. So as I'm getting ready for end of the year, on the next slide, you'll see our student profile. This is a student that I pulled up here. You see most of it's green, but then I've got one little area here in the geometry that the student maybe was struggled with. So they haven't mastered that standard throughout the year. So when we get ready for end of the year assessments, I know that that's what this student needs to work on. And each student I can get that profile on. On the next slide, it breaks it down into the actual standards, you know, that the students mastered or they need to work on. So again, this is the same student. At the bottom, it breaks it down into those individual standards that we need to look at. So now, as I'm getting ready to start making these assessments, here's kind of my workflow that I go through for the assessments. First thing is I go to my library. So if you go to the library tab, you can see all the assessments that you have created in the past, or there's a little drop-down menu there where you can look for assessments that have been made by Edulastic certified people or that have been made by other people in your district. So I always go right here and I'll look first and say, all right, there's something here that I can use or I need to start looking elsewhere. There's also, you can put standards in there and start searching that way. Now, if I don't see an assessment that I can just pull from automatically, the next thing that I do is I go straight to the assessment banks. So when you go in there, you can punch in your standard. So go to the next slide, please. You can go in here, you can punch in your standards. I got punched in here in the top left here. This was a geometry standard that we were looking at, and it'll pull you up every assessment item they've got by that standard. So what I do from that point is, if you'll click the screen once, you'll see these red boxes pop up here. There are ID numbers. If you could click the screen, please. you'll see these red boxes pop up here, and there's ID numbers that go to each one of these questions. I will go through and I will write down all those ID numbers, because when you create an assessment, then you can put those ID numbers in and then create your whole test. And then the last thing that I do is if I can't get that, then I go to authoring questions. So I start looking at, all right, I've got to make my own assessments. There's two ways you can do that. You can do it in the library tab, or you can do that in the assessments tab. And if you'll click twice, maybe 3 times for me, here are your question types that you have for each one. And as someone was saying earlier, even if you don't know how to do this, there is a question mark on each one of these assessment types that will take you to a video of how to create the assignments for each one of those. So that's kind of my workflow. As I said, I know that you guys are kind of the same place that I am right now. My best advice to you guys right now is find some team members, find your PLN that you can work with that can help you pull this off and work together.
Thank you, Lance. I think the one thing that stands out to me is the pre-test might be hugely valuable, even more so than normal in a situation like this, because you can really get a feel for where the students are starting. And then by the post-test, you can see if this distance learning has actually been effective during this couple of weeks that we're enduring all of this craziness. Well, so Lance, thank you. I appreciate it. And if you have any questions for Lance, please put your questions in the chat again. We wanted to make, we polled all of our speakers, and we got some final takeaways from each one of them that we'll share with you here. But since we are bumping up against 5 o'clock, we wanted to be conscientious of your time. And this has been such great information. We will go over the takeaways, and we will also go over a few other resources. But if you'd like to stick around for getting any questions answered, we're all still here to do that for you. The final takeaways, let's back up really quickly and we'll just go over that. Don't try to mimic an actual school day. It's not a normal situation. Provide explicit instructions for each step, including screenshots or pictures, and test out your procedures with someone else to ensure that directions are crystal clear. When using online labs or simulations, use HTML5 where possible, and avoid using Flash or Java at all costs. For HTML5 should work on every device. And then for at-home labs, be sure that the items required are very common items that most people would have at home or could get in a pinch. So those are a few of the takeaways. You'll also have access to the rest of this list when we send this out to you. If you have any questions about any of the tools that our presenters have talked about, or the ones that we've shared from Edulastic, you can go to the teacher resources, the teacher training hub. And if you scroll down to the bottom of that, you'll see on the left side here, we've got all of different areas. So we've got training resources like on-demand, role-based training if you want a little bit more detail on any one of these areas. We have our live webinars and events are posted here. We've got articles from teachers about teaching strategies like this using Edulastic. And then we've got a couple other resources that you can access, including getting out to our YouTube page and any other training or certification sources. So those are a couple places to go. I think right now we'll turn it over to the audience and our team who's been collecting questions all along. Are there any that stand out that are the most common questions that we can get our moderators, or excuse me, our speakers to answer?
I think we've gotten most of the questions. There was a question about how many students are in Lance's district.
In our district, we've got 12,000 students in our district.
Okay, thanks.
12,000. And one thing that for our listeners, again, I can't express how much and how important it is for you to get a PLN, personal learning network, to help you work with this, because I didn't come up with this plan on my own. Many people across the world did. And you can follow me on Twitter and I can get you to those people so that you can also, not have to do all this work by yourself.
Great network. Well, great. We will stick around a little bit longer if you've got any Edulastic questions. We can also follow up with our presenters if you have a question that's specific to the presenters. But it looks like almost all of our attendees have stayed throughout this whole seminar, and you can tell that how timely and how good the information really was. Before we part, I want to also reach out and give a little shout out to Jan Moody and Ileana Betancourt from our marketing team, who pulled this really fantastic seminar together in a matter of days. And I don't know how you guys found everybody, but our speakers are top notch. The information is hugely valuable, and you guys did a really great job on that. So thank you for making this available for us.
Our pleasure.
Everyone's presentations were awesome. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, so with that, we'll end the presentations, but if you have any questions, you can stick around and ask us questions in the chat, and we'll get those answered as quickly as we can.